This is inevitable as the Chicago Bulls will have to answer some tough questions about the extensions that they gave to Lonzo Ball and Patrick Williams. We're going to be talking about their contract, their impact, and if the Chicago Bulls can move on from either player next season. This is your host, Rico Greenhowe, and you have found yourself on another episode of Bulls Digest. And so before we jump into it, wanted to remind you that 72.3% of you that watch are not subscribed to the channel. So make sure, like Modest Mazelis does in games, you slam dunk on that subscribe button for us, as it means a lot to us here at Bulls Digest as we try to reach our end of the season subscriber goal. With that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the content today. And so we are talking about both Patrick Williams and Lonzo Ball, because both of these players signed some extensions with the Chicago Bulls last season, and both players ran into some situations that I think we all knew might be something that was going to be inevitable for the Chicago Bulls. And so let's go ahead and start with the impact and looking at Lonzo Ball first. And so look, Lonzo Ball to me was huge for the Chicago Bulls, and I think that his impact was felt on the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball. His basketball IQ was huge for us, starting with the offense, because he was really a stabilizer for the Chicago Bulls. Whenever the offense got stagnant, he was the guy to make sure that we get the basketball down to Vooch. He definitely was a player that was going to make sure that he rewards players for moving in the half court. So if you were moving, good cut, you can trust that Lonzo was going to find you that way. He was terrific as far as getting rebounds and starting the fast break and really getting that done without putting the basketball on the ground. And literally, he was like a coach on the floor for the Chicago Bulls. And you love the fact that he blended in so well with Kobe White and Josh Giddey. That was something that was talked about going into this season. So he was perfect for us there. Defensively, he was all over the place. If you got a chance to watch the games, you listen to Stacey King. At times, it sounded like there were 5 Lonzo Balls out there with the kind of just chaos that he really calls teams, because he was out there doubling. He would play the passing lane. He would, just literally make some plays where he would get chased down blocks and all kinds of stuff. The energy was felt for the Chicago Bulls across the board. And so his basketball IQ was huge on both ends. And it was just bigger than the numbers, because as we take a look here, you're going to see a player that just didn't put up like huge numbers. But like I said, the impact, it's not measurable in stats. 7.6 points, 3.3 assists, 3.4 rebounds a game. And he also shot just 34% from downtown, and he was at 36.6% from the field. So you see the field goal percentage, it wasn't even there, but still the impact was there for Lonzo Ball. And so that leads us to the next point and just talking about, Lonzo and his contract. And so, look, I think that Lonzo has a contract that, to me, not only is it team friendly, but I think it's a contract that is very much movable. And I think it's still a movable contract even with the end to the season that Lonzo Ball had, because I think a lot of people look at that and they go, okay, he only played 35 games. He only played, 5 more games after the extension. But I still think that you can move on from Lonzo Ball. And so I think that it's something where as the season starts, I feel like the trade value still goes up. But I think that with what Lonzo Ball did last season, I think that there's definitely going to be some teams out there that definitely want to get in on Lonzo Ball. And so, with the fact that his contract is worth, 2 for 20, so $10 million each year, and the fact that it's a team option, I think that that's huge and not a player option. So if a team were to go out and trade for him, then they have the option to pick that up or not. And also, too, if he stays with the Bulls, the Chicago Bulls really have the option to go ahead and pick that up. And so that's point number one. You have the team option, which I think is going to be favorable for you, especially if he's going to be injured. But number two, just with his impact, I feel like that there's still teams that will definitely give the Chicago Bulls a second round pick. Now, is it going to become multiple picks? I think that would be something where if Lonzo is able to come out, play the way that he was playing, trend the way that he was trending, because I think the minutes were going up. He showed that he could definitely jump in and do a spot start for you. I think that there's certainly a team that would give you some multiple second-round picks for him, because I could see him being on a playoff team like the Minnesota Timberwolves, like the Clippers who were in the playoffs. I could see that happening, or really any other team, even a Golden State. I could see that happening where they would want to see him come off the bench. And I think that his impact is going to be more so like a Sean Livingston. And so I'm thinking of Sean Livingston that used to play for the Golden State Warriors and won some titles, and he came off a really bad knee injury. And so, yes, I know Lonzo's had a knee injury. It's not similar to that, but just the fact that he was able to come back and play this well, it shows you that this is a player with that basketball IQ. He can definitely help a playoff team really get over the hump, especially if you feel like that you're close. And so this is why I feel like that Lonzo is definitely on a contract that is movable. It's team friendly at $10 million. That's really nothing, especially with the salary cap going up and things like that. And so, look, I think that AK would be wise to really cash in on Lonzo Ball and move him if there's an opportunity. I think that based off the way things finished last season, AK cannot afford to hold on to assets like he's done before and just overvalue it. So you cannot think that you're going to get a first-round pick for Lonzo Ball. I think if you can get a second-round pick, or if you can get an established young player that just really hasn't figured it out over to help you with your rebuild, then you go ahead and you do that. And I'm thinking of an example player like maybe a Kevin Huerter, like a guy that has shown some success in this league, can do something that, is of value to your team. And he's young enough that you can really build with him, and he's not on a huge contract. And so I think that this is why, his contract is certainly a favorable contract and one that the Chicago Bulls can move, which leads me now to the next player where I think it's going to be a bit more challenging to move on from this one, but it would be Patrick Williams. And so let's start first with Patrick Williams and the impact that Patrick Williams had, because I'm going to say, look, his impact was minimal at best, because, with him, it was definitely inconsistent. And I think that it was pretty disappointing, I'd say, as a Chicago Bulls fan, just seeing this from Patrick Williams, because he had so much runway this season, and it was like you hear it all the time, the no excuses. And so coming into this, the offense was geared to get up and down the floor, which it did. And that fits Patrick Williams, the athleticism, and that didn't happen. There were several times he'd get in the open floor, miss dunks and things like that. The three-point shots, that is something that Patrick Williams, that's really his calling card, knocking down three-point shots. He digressed in that, category as well. And with an offense that was spread out and open for him, he wasn't able to take advantage of that. Zach LaVine, I know he was here at the start of the year. He wasn't here to finish out the year. And, even with that, with DeMar DeRozan gone and, people talking about positioning and stuff like that, I think that Patrick Williams had a ton of opportunity to play whatever he wanted to play. I get that he had to step it up defensively, which there was a bit of a decline there too as well, but he didn't step up offensively when everything was opened up for him. Defensively, it was a struggle for him too, and then he dealt with some injuries and things like that. And this definitely didn't start off well for Patrick Williams, because coming into this, I'm reminded of the report in The Athletic from Darnell Mayberry, where he said that Patrick Williams had a setback. And so that's where the players met. They had a mini training camp before the training camp, and he got to training camp and said that it didn't happen. But clearly Patrick Williams just was not himself at the start of the season. And so he definitely probably did have maybe something along those lines, but we'll never know, right? And so that was concerning, because I had said this before leading into the season. We saw Lonzo play fives. We saw Zach LaVine play fives, but we had never seen any videos with Patrick Williams, playing in fives. And so it was a bad start there. And then on top of that, I think that fans were probably on the edge with the fact that he just got offered a contract, and they didn't even let him really explore free agency, because remember, he was a restricted free agent. So they just signed him to 4 years, $90 million, $18 million. And so when you look at the contract, I think that the numbers itself is not necessarily the issue. I think that the issue, really for Patrick Williams is just that the production, right? So you look at the numbers here, The 9 points a game, that actually was a decline for him, down from 10 points a game. The steals were down as well, so 0.8, it was 0.9 a season ago. His rebounds, 3.9 a season ago to 3.8, so that was down. What was really concerning is you see the field goal percentage, 39% from the field and 35% from three. So his percentages went down, and this was just a terrible year, I think, for Patrick Williams. And on top of that, Patrick Williams lost his job to rookie Modest Buzelis, and I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing, with Modest Buzelis. And I'd said this before, watching him in the summer league, I knew that, look, he was destined to start, but I just don't know if Patrick Williams is going to do enough over the summer to get the job back. And so that leads us really ultimately to just the last point with Patrick Williams and his contract, and is it something that the Chicago Bulls should look to move from? The answer to that is yes, they should look to move off of it, but the issue is I don't think that it's something that teams want. And I think that the unfortunate thing here is that as time goes along, I'm not sure that teams are going to want to jump in on that. I think that the chance to cash in on that was probably earlier last season when Patrick Williams was playing. We had heard the rumors about maybe Golden State wanting to get involved in a deal. Maybe they would want him. That could have been the time that maybe the Chicago Bulls could have cashed out with him and Vooch. But now, with the way things finished, I would say that the value for that has gone down, and I don't know that Patrick Williams is going to be able to recover that because, look, we've seen the things with, Peter Patton. I just talked about the numbers going down, Modest Buzelis taking over the starting spot. And I think ultimately now it's not coaching. It all comes down to Patrick Williams. And if you're banking on him figuring it out, I don't necessarily think that happens. And so at $18 million a year, again, it's not anything that's bad as far as the NBA is concerned with the salary cap and things going up. But for the Chicago Bulls, it really could be the worst contract because even when you look at a guy like Javon Carter, yes, he has 1 year left and it's a player option, but it's only $6 million. And when you look at the production, look, sadly, Javon Carter had a game where he scored 26 points. Patrick Williams didn't score 20 points until game 79 of this last season. He scored 21 points. And so that just lets you know from a production standpoint and kind of where the Bulls are as far as being stuck right now with that contract. Oh, by the way, that has a player option at the end of it. So by far, Lonzo Ball is the movable contract. Patrick Williams is definitely a contract that becomes difficult. No contract in the NBA is unmovable, but man, I think that as time goes along, it just becomes more difficult. But anyhow, you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking. Do you feel like that Lonzo Ball, even with the injuries, it's still a contract that is very much movable for the Chicago Bulls? Would you go ahead and move Lonzo Ball, with the backcourt coming together like it did last season and being able to get some more draft picks to help this team build out for the long term? Would you go ahead and make a move like that? Would you keep Lonzo? And with Patrick Williams, look, are you to the point where you want to move on from Lonzo or from Patrick Williams? Do you feel like that it's possible to move on from Patrick Williams based off the play? Would you try to pick up the phone and move Patrick Williams? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.